Welcome everyone. I am Mr. Goldenbaum and this is Supremacy 1914. We have been able to get another soldier out to Rapid City, which essentially means we've taken both of his double iron provinces, and this one up here actually had a railroad. We're going to continue to take some of these coal provinces as well. As we're capturing these gas provinces, we're actually not looting anything from the provinces that we're capturing, which leads me to believe that he has a rather significant shortage of gas, if any at all, in the bank. We have a significant army that is moving to the north. He only has the one artillery. I should say he doesn't get any free artillery units, and the normal damage from him is about 12. And if we compare that to a regular artillery, we can see that it is about 1.5 times the rate of a normal artillery unit, which is fine. We have 6. With him not having anything more than a single fortification, I will take this trade. We have plenty of meat shields, plus we have an armored car. The cavalry unit is almost gone at this point, but it does serve to increase our hit point pool and our defense, so we will continue to push onto the capital. But you may have noticed that our opponent here has bombers. The issue with a lot of bombers, especially in small quantities, their utility is very limited in that mid-game. They're very expensive units. If we take a look at some of our production here in the south, and you compare that, you compare what, 5,000 iron, 75, so over 12,000 materials, to, at that point, being very comparable to a railroad gun, way more expensive than, let's say, a heavy tank or a tank. But the utility is limited. Bombers are excellent at taking out any kind of exposed or vulnerable artillery units that may be sieging some of your provinces or moving into position, and they happen to be in your bomber's range. If they don't have an escort, they're as good as gone. And even if you're not able to take them out in the first go-around, you're definitely going to be trading really well. Even if you have Ivan here, which is weaker than a normal bomber, I believe he's got half of the attack. What does Ivan have? He's got 80 hit points, 15 normal damage. If we take a look at a bomber, we can see here that they have 80, so the same amount of hit points, but they have 30 damage. So he's about half as weak as a regular bomber. But if you look at the hit points of an artillery piece, only 20 here. So Ivan might not be able to take out an artillery piece in one go. But the beautiful thing is that you're able to patrol ground. And so with this patrol ground action, you're able to attack all enemy units in an area every 15 minutes with reduced damage, meaning that the way the game splits it up is you do a quarter of the damage and take a quarter of the damage. Each quarter there, every 15-minute little tick, which means that after 4 ticks, you would have done the same amount of damage had you just attacked the unit directly. But instead, you're able to continue to attack that unit, which means you can certainly start clearing out more than one artillery unit, even if you don't have the damage to do it in one tick. So definitely very powerful, and that's the way I would like to do a lot of these engagements, unless you can only afford to kind of go in on a kind of like a drive-by or fly-by when you know your opponent has additional fighter cover. At that point, it may be a little risky to stay there for a longer period of time. But they do have value if your opponent has a lot of artillery units. Unfortunately, they are easily countered, and unfortunately, you can't really go up against a lot of strong infantry stacks. As you can see here with Ivan, he's getting destroyed. I don't think he's killed any of our units here. So Ivan has been targeting our army here for a little while now. As you can see, his range is pretty far. But he's gone in for 3 attacks. He's lost most of his health at this point, and he hasn't taken out a single unit. Now, if he had another bomber, that'd be twice as much, or 3 times as much damage as he's doing right now. And so maybe he'd be kind of dwindling away a few infantry units. But if you continue to do these kind of attacks, the bombers are going to die. You're going to lose the resources, and even if you just do a little bit of damage and you stop for that final assault, it's going to take a little while for these bombers to recuperate a lot of those hit points, putting them out of the match. So they're not really effective against larger stacks, especially stacks like we've talked about that have balloons or armored cars. And in this stack, we do happen to have an armored car, which means we get an additional 8. We get an additional 8 air damage. And if you compare that to a lot of our regular infantry, if we click on our army group, you look at our air target defense, 22. So not half, but a really good chunk, over a third of our air defense here just comes from that single armored car. So you can see how valuable that is. But the bombers are going to attack us. With him defending all of his core territory from his capital, he can reach everything. But let's say you have a larger front, you're bordering multiple nations, you're going up against a lot of other nations. That's a lot of airports that you have to build to even be able to utilize said bombers. So there's definitely utility there, but they're not a unit that I typically rush for unless it looks like the front is stagnant, you're dealing with a lot of fortifications, and your opponent has those exposed, vulnerable, those juicy targets in the artillery that would be worth going after. And at that point, I think all you really need is 1 or 2 bombers. Maybe you make a fighter of your own, and that's exactly what we're doing here. We're building an additional fighter, and we're building a bomber. These 2 guys should easily be able to snipe an artillery unit in one go-round, and then use the patrol ground to start taking out larger groups. And should our opponents have bombers of their own, as we're slowly starting to expand our airport infrastructure, we'll have that additional fighter there to potentially support any kind of exposed units. But that early bomber or 2 followed by a fighter, I think, is a good way to go about it. But you don't want to kind of overinvest in that mid game. In the late game, once we're able to put together a pretty powerful stack, well, hey, at that point, you can start doing some massive damage while not taking as many hit points up against these large stacks. Because unfortunately, a lot of these stacks would only have the 50 max damage. So if you're attacking this with 1 bomber versus 50 bombers, the amount of damage that they're able to do is capped and limited. And the larger these engagements are, the more beneficial trades you'll get out of them. But things are going very well on the South Dakota front. Most of the front has collapsed at this point. As you can see from Louisiana, South Dakota has retreated from all of the provinces over here, and they are retreating to the north here in Spencer. We did have a few units here that were able to cause some damage, and what you can see here is that they have a travel time of just over 3 hours, whereas we're going to be able to catch up to them and secure this defensive position in less than 3. And if you look at the morale differences, we are set. I think technically we're at, if we click on the right spot, you'll see that we are at, okay, so missing health. So we are at just like about 76% of our total morale. Compared to our max 100%, whereas this guy, I mean, he's just at about a quarter at that point. So this is going to be a lopsided engagement. We're going to be able to take out all of these troops. So that's an additional 75,000. And honestly, I don't think we're going to take that many casualties. I mean, our defense is going to be 133. We're going to take the defensive fight, and he's got 30. This one has 54. So maybe we'll lose 10,000, but I don't see us losing more than that with this engagement. And then we have Louisiana here hot on their heels. Should he choose to pause or take a different stance, Louisiana here will catch up and be able to wipe out all of those troops. The biggest concern for me, though, right now is the tank army led by Marco that's sitting here in Omaha. We were almost able to secure this territory when he was moving out over here to Sioux City. Or actually, I think he was going over to Spencer, taking the alternative route here. But unfortunately, he turned around. He did reinforce this province before we were able to secure it. And with him having a lot of concentrated mechanized units, he does have a lot of attack and defense, and our Marco just really doesn't have it. We may have more hit points, but they have about 100 infantry of their own. So the trades against a level 5 fort, which is going to reduce damage. Let's see, I can't click that. Let's just go over here and go all the way to level 5. 90%, which is absolutely insane. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to beat that stack, but we do have 2 additional heavy tanks coming in. What we're going to do is actually move these troops right up against the border with Omaha, and we're just going to have Tatiana pecking away here, causing a little bit of damage. We're also investing in, and with all of our excess cash, I think we're sitting at over 400,000 in the bank from all the grain and fish we've been able to sell. We've invested that into 5 spies, which will actually be trying to engage in military sabotage, as I'm trying to lower that fortification level as much as I can. Ideally as well, this morale, the morale in the province will continue to drop, which means this army is going to continue to lose hit points. So the status quo works for me pretty well. And as we're able to bring up more ranged units from the rear, we'll be able to do even more damage against this army. If this army wasn't here, we could have easily started making some progress and totally eliminated South Dakota. But unfortunately, we do have to secure our flank. The last thing I would like to happen is for this 80 tank army to start, kind of barreling down over into my core territory, my capital. If he tries to do that right now, we do have troops in the area that would be able to intercept. We are building up a little bit of our infrastructure here in the east as well. I don't want to invest in these oil fields until we do eliminate the biggest threat in the area. Montana, I can't recall if I covered it at this point, but he did come back as a player and he did engage in a lot of fights in the area. Looks like he is losing the provinces that he took from Minnesota. He did take one from South Dakota, proving to be a really nice distraction. He's since lost it. And it looks like South Dakota, for whatever reason, it could be out of spite for maybe Minnesota not helping him out in the early part of the game. But he did eliminate, or he did kick Minnesota out of their coalition. And it looks like he's disbanded it as well. Not sure if he was trying to maybe join a different coalition, but he did cancel everything, and he may just be trying to put Minnesota in a good position, maybe have Minnesota take some of these provinces from me, take these provinces before I'm able to, but it doesn't make a huge difference. I want the capital sacked, but if I don't get it, it's not the end of the world here. But our 2 primary targets are the artillery group here in the west and the big army group here in Omaha. Once with these 2 eliminated, we should be able to push up, take more of his energy provinces that he is desperately needing, and just lay siege to the capital. I don't know how many troops he has. Taking a look at the newspaper, going to the statistics, you can see that we have roughly about 2 to 3 times as many troops as he does. And if we take a look at our profile, we can see that we've got about 763. So if he had half of our troops, that would be what, about 350, 370, kind of 380, kind of hovering around there. And if he didn't have half, maybe about a third, well, then we're talking about 250 troops. And if we look at all the troops in the area, just by double clicking some of his soldiers, we can see that at least half of his army is easily exposed in the area. We're going to eliminate this stack and this stack. He's got about 100,000 left in Omaha. So that means he's got about maybe 50. And if I got my math wrong and he actually has more, he could have up to maybe, let's say, 100 infantry troops. And these infantry troops would be at a high morale, because I would imagine it's the ones, it would be the soldiers from his core territory. So certainly a lot stronger. I don't want to rush into it, even though I feel like I would be able to take on a lot of these engagements and win. But these are soldiers I don't want to lose. I want to preserve it, because if we look at the larger map, you have Minnesota here right in the neighborhood with a large army. He's only lost 89,000 troops, so he's got hundreds of thousands ready for me should a conflict arise. And then we also have Utah continuing to work through Chihuahua here, our Mexican ally, though I don't believe Chihuahua has made any progress at all. You have 5 artillery pieces and 1 artillery piece just bombarding, taking out already 45,000 troops already from the Chihuahuan forces. Meanwhile, he's got a bomber sitting right here, and we were talking about some of the bomber tactics. He's got the coverage. If he had another bomber, or I mean a fighter, even in this situation with the reduced range, I would certainly recommend coupling a fighter in with your bombers, as they're able to, one, act as an escort, potentially taking damage from other fighters if your opponent chooses to intercept. So I would certainly recommend that, but he should really be going after these artillery pieces, especially since that these two players, they're active at different times. So once, Utah stops moving, he could easily take out both of these artillery units, I should say both of these artillery stacks, with just this bomber, or at least do plenty of damage, maybe get this other artillery piece into position and start chipping away at some of these artillery pieces as well. I don't see any other production in this territory outside of the fighter. Unfortunately, Chihuahua never invested in any railroads, any factories. I mean, he built a lot of his infrastructure in these single provinces on the coast. He probably needed the food, but then he doesn't have a lot of materials left for a lot of other projects. He built workshops in every single one of his provinces, so that's where a lot of his resources went. He built some barracks in a single province, so that's really not helping him. So a lot of calls that I wouldn't have made, and that could have translated to multiple artillery pieces or potentially even cavalry if he was able to use those resources wisely and invest in key strategic resources. So at this stage, I could see Utah just mopping up everything in the area here. As soon as he sees this single artillery piece here all by itself, he's going to go for it. And at that point, even with this 50 stack, he's got the hit points. He would do 87 damage, 109, and there's a fortification there. I wouldn't take that fight, probably with the tank there. He's not going to be able to trade favorably. But he should be able to take everything else here. Pennsylvania is continuing to get slapped by Ohio here. I don't know what happened. He's lost 309,000 troops at this stage, 121,000 directly to Ohio. I think Ohio has the highest ratio in the game at this point. I think South Dakota had the highest for a little bit, but we have changed that. And California also had a pretty good early game, but unfortunately with him going AI, Chihuahua was able to turn the tide on him as well. Grain has been a huge blessing for us on the market. It looks like there are users or AI nations that are continuing to purchase, and if they're continuing to purchase, I will continue to sell. With prices dropping to sub 5, and it looks like all the fish activity kind of going to 1, we had started transitioning a lot of our grain production directly into barracks. So we've actually turned these guys on, have them at level 2. We are cranking out infantry, every 4 or 5 hours at this point. So they're doing really well. We're building additional barracks down here in the south. We don't have enough grain for that at the moment. And we may actually end up pausing some of our production if grain prices are so high. But if they do continue to plummet, we'll build barracks, we'll build cavalry, we have the cash for it. With all that extra grain and barracks, our infantry recruitment is just going to skyrocket. If we take a look at province administration, you can see that we still have a lot of tanks coming out. I believe we've got 5 already on the map. 3 of them in position, the other 2 are still slowly kind of wheeling in, as they are one of the slower units in the game. But we have 2 additional ones in production. We talked about getting the bomber and the fighter. These are more so opportunistic mechanized units, but we'll be able to also produce 3 additional artillery, which will help with our artillery force, bringing our total, I believe, to about 10,000 at this point. We are at 9,000 artillery, so that actually brings us past the 10 I was originally thinking. So a very formidable artillery force. But even if you don't have the artillery advantage or mechanized advantage, I keep looking at this situation, and if I could come in there with like 3 artillery pieces, looks like the range here is just cut off at the city. What I would be able to do is just wait for the ticks here to kind of be in the middle of their cycle, kind of come in here, maybe like a little bit 5 minutes out, so I'm not directly sitting in the province, and I would just bombard both of these. One last little interesting tidbit I would like to share is a lot of players, instead of just leaving their artillery here to automatically fire at any nearby targets, just kind of like the fire at will setting if you have premium. Instead of that, a lot of players will actually select the unit to fire on, which means that if you move your troops out of the city, out of this location, the artillery pieces, I believe once their countdown goes to 0 and they see that they can't fire, they will begin to pursue, which means that you can kind of draw in and bait a lot of your opponent's forces. And then what you would be able to do with this stack is actually, let's demonstrate with like a random stack right here. If they're targeting this 6 stack, what you can do is just kind of have your troops go back into your core territory. Let's say the opponent's right there. And all you have to do is split a significant force from your original stack, send them back, and your opponent's troops are still going after this DD31 infantry brigade instead of your newly created brigade, which means they can come closer, potentially into artillery fire of your own, or you'd be able to then, at that point, come out with a larger stack if you can get the artillery units to pass, let's say, a potential buffer. Thank you all for watching, and with that, I will see you guys on the next one.